Hi, I'm Sherry Damaris. Welcome to Macro Magic. Today I have with me Dr. Colin Campbell. He is a professor emeritus of nutritional biochemistry at Cornell University. As of August 1st, he has been in the research scientific field for 65 years. He has helped with food and policy and food initiatives throughout the world. He has lectured on and off campuses in 60 countries, and he's best known for his book, The China Study, which he co-authored with his son, Dr. Thomas Campbell, who is a doctor and a researcher at the University of Rochester Medical Center. And the book has sold over 3 million copies and has been translated into 50 different languages. So welcome, Dr. Campbell. So nice to have you.
It's a pleasure being here, yes.
It's wonderful. Your work is just so world renowned, and I'm so excited to have you. And I heard you have great news about the pandemic, hopeful news for all of us about how we can even change individually and sort of prevent or inhibit some of this horrible virus that's been attacking all of us recently.
Okay, you want me to tell a little story about that?
Yes.
Okay, so going back 65 years, yes, thank you for making that note. I did start my career that long ago doing graduate work, and actually this is germane to what I want to say. Namely, I was raised on a dairy farm. I did my doctoral dissertation at Cornell University on the whole idea of advancing the cause of animal-based protein. So that was the early part of my career. That was the territory I was in, like everyone else. But then I saw something in the Philippines. I was at Virginia Tech, and we had a project in the Philippines feeding malnourished children. And I saw something there really odd for me, given my background. And that was that we were there to make sure these kids got enough protein. They were starving, malnourished children. Mm-hmm. And the idea wasn't that they weren't getting enough protein. So that was our charge. But then I saw something odd. And without getting into the details, I thought I could see some evidence that the children who were getting the most protein, like we do in the West, they were at a higher risk of getting liver cancer. So we had a problem. Here we're going to be advancing the consumption of animal protein, but we have this problem. So that was the basis for my then coming back home, organizing a project with NIH funding that lasted then for the next 27 years in that particular case and that project. And I wanted to know, is it true that animal protein can increase liver cancer of all crazy things?
Wow.
That was hard to say. And what we did, used experimental animal data in this particular case through those years, lots of students and postdocs and so forth, I've learned, yes, animal protein has a profound ability to increase experimental cancer development. And along the way, as that went on, we published a lot of this stuff at the time, I kept running across things all the time that was really challenging some very sacred ideas in nutrition, if I can refer to it that way. Namely, we could turn on and turn off cancer development just by adjusting the level of protein consumption, animal protein consumption. Plant proteins didn't do this. Only animal proteins did. I mean, right there, that was a striking difference. I mean, it was like going from 0% cancer return to 100% back and forth. It was that striking. And we learned some other things too, that the further I got into it, the more trouble I was getting myself into in terms of the system that we live in. Namely, I wanted to know, how does that work? If the animal protein is in turn on cancer, how does it work? So we started looking for what we refer to as mechanisms in biochemical sense. What is the mechanism that accounts for this protein effect? And that's pretty fundamental to the research like this. Namely, if you see something odd, whether it concerns a drug or a nutrient, or whatever, if you see something odd, in order to get some understanding of it or even belief in the idea, it's a good idea to have this information on mechanisms. So we started looking for the mechanism, because if we found one, we could maybe get a drug. to block that. We can keep on eating animal protein. But this went on for 12 or 13 years, a bunch of postdocs and graduate students. Every time we looked for a mechanism, we found one. Which is striking. There's no such thing as the mechanism. This is nutrition at work. It's a protein, basically, causes this. So it led me all of a sudden to this idea that our belief that single nutrients act in a specific way by single mechanism to cause a single effect, that whole paradigm is to be questioned. In fact, there's a whole tsunami of mechanisms that operate in that way. And so that essentially challenges a very fundamental structure of the entire drug industry. Because drug industries and that sort of thing, they're always looking for the mechanism to get some chemical for it and then do something with it. When in reality, protein doesn't act, nutrition doesn't act that way.
Yeah,
So
and that's what you highlighted in your book Whole as well, the whole process of digesting whole foods versus tiny little vitamin pills and things like that.
For sure. And so what we end up with is that, we have obviously countless nutrients. They're not just the 30 or 40 read about in books. There are hundreds of thousands or many, many more that come in various versions. And so we come to that realization that there's so many things operating together, each of which has their own sort of playground, all interacting with each other. And then you come to realize, too, all of that's integrated. It's integrated in marvelous ways. We could never do that. Even with the best computers in the world, we couldn't do that.
Right.
But they have all of that. And so that led to some other ideas. So all of a sudden, I had this information that suggested that nutrition is very powerful. But it's not taught in medical schools. Doctors aren't being reimbursed for teaching nutrition. All of a sudden, then it comes into what came into view for me is that nutrition had a very special property that involves the whole thing. And that was in the book Whole. All working together at the cellular level. And it's just nature at work.
Right.
And what we are trying to do in modern medicine, and especially in the drug industry, is trying to manipulate and manage that one at a time. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
That's why all drugs have side effects. So it brings me back to the idea that nutrition is very powerful. It's extraordinary. All we need to do is eat the right kind of food. Just eat it. And we can mix and match, or we can, it doesn't make any difference which kind of leafy green we want, or which kind of grain. It should be whole grains, but it should be the food that nature provided for us. And if we're eating it that way, our choices, we can dress it up and make it pleasant and all with herbs and spices and flavors and that sort of thing. So we can actually represent different cuisines around the world that way, just as long as we're eating plant-based food.
Yes.
So my mantra is, I coined the term whole food plant-based when I was on an NIH committee back in the late 70s. And it was with this, in reference to this idea. I didn't want to use the word vegetarian, to be honest about it, because that was usually meant something else, quite appropriate, no problem there. But I wanted this to be based on science. So I came up with a rather odd term, whole food plant-based, which kind of stuck around now for all these years. And so it's really focused on science. So my ideas, my interpretation of all this is that nutrition is the most fundamental of all biomedical topics, if you will, or specialties. And here's not even part of our training in medicine. And so I'm in a different world. I ended up in a very different world thinking about what this is. And it's, incidentally, as you well know, it's rather similar to the macrobiotic diet idea.
Yes.
Michio Kushi was a friend of mine. I had him up lecturing in my place. I lectured at his place. I represented him at the Smithsonian Institute when it got established at that time, his records. And so we were friends and so forth and so on. And so now I call it whole food plant-based, even though it may these days go by the name vegan or vegetarian or whatever this and that. I don't want to even enter into what the differences really are. But the point is just eating plants.
Yes.
Eating whole plant-based foods. And I can argue that case until the cows come home, which I used to say. Argue that case on the basis of basic science. It's really an incredible thing, and we can actually prevent serious diseases as well as treat them. as you know.
Yes.
We can reverse diseases, thanks to my friend Dr. Esselton, Dr. Ornish, Dr. DeVivo. I mean, they were sort of working with some patients. And they saw this kind of thing that I thought was probably true, but by the time I got around to knowing them, it was just sort of icing on the cake, in a sense, than what they were doing.
Yeah, and it's so nice to have you in the field representing all that, because it's been such a hard road for teaching people. They're all hooked on protein, they need more protein. And in this time of the pandemic, they're all running, for looking for an outside answer. They're not looking to reevaluate what you're eating and how you're shopping and what you're growing in your garden. So it's really important, for their immune system to start looking inward and to start evaluating what they're putting in their mouth and how important a role that plays on whether they even make it through, getting the flu or the virus, or can prevent the flu.
Right, absolutely. You want me to talk about what my latest stuff is?
Mm-hmm.
That all what I just said was published in, say, lots of journals and that sort of thing. And I finally, recently, with the coronavirus pandemic that we're now living with, and there's all kinds of things that people are talking about, how they manage this, and it's kind of odd and it's surreal. It's just kind of crazy.
Yes.
Or other kinds these days. And so all of a sudden I recall here about a month ago, maybe, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had data in China. Oh, I forgot to mention, as you know, we did a big survey in China in the early 80s, looking at the relationship between heart disease, cancer, and all those kind of diseases with respect to nutrition. And so that was published in 1990, actually. We had a huge body of data. And I remember then, as I say, just recalled this 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had evidence on viruses in China too, because we had recorded that information.
Yeah, I read your article about how you actually knew about that way back when with the
virus we studied in
hepatitis.
some detail, and I'm going to argue that what we learned there, this is real data. I'm not just dreaming up stuff. This has been published. Basically, we had 4 viruses we looked at from being a cause of various cancers. One of them, hepatitis B. And in that particular case, we had information on the rate of liver cancer in the population. It was a population in that study of about 8,900 people. It included villages all over rural China and Taiwan. And so we measured all kinds of nutrient characteristics among these people. The materials in the blood, the kind of food they're consuming, all kinds of diseases and so forth and so on. So we had this really beautiful set of data that I was able to go back and look at.
And that's so awesome. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to show you some slides, some more information about your research on that, as well as talk about how people can get in touch with you and see all the wonderful programs that you're offering the public.
Nine regular. Oh, wait, 13 giant. The usual?
Of course. Number 1.
Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacqueline. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacqueline.com to book an appointment today.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There you go, Richard. Oh! Is that too hard for you?
No. Is it too hard for you?
Woo! We're playing catch now. Oh, shit.
What do I want to be when I grow up? Maybe a musician? A veterinarian? Maybe an equestrian? A mommy? Well, why not be all these things and more? Consider joining me, Dr. V, with friends and colleagues as we explore a wide range of topics together. V is for variety, here on RVN TV.
Welcome back to Macro Magic. I'm with Dr. T. Colin Campbell, author of the China Study. We're talking about the virus, the myth of needing so much protein in your diet, and his work from 30 years ago, and some insightful research that he's now resurfacing regarding in relationship to the pandemic. So welcome back, Colin. We have some slides that you wanted to present. The first is the significant nutritional correlations for the HPV, antigens and antibodies.
Okay, let me see if I can work this out. I don't see the slides, but we'll see what we can do. As I said before, we measured some things having to do with virus activity in these different people in that population. For example, we measured in this 8,900 person survey, if you will, we measured the amount of hepatitis antigen in people in their blood. The antigen now, that's the active virus, okay? And one thing we can say, we studied in this case hepatitis B virus, but I do have to say something here. There are a zillion different kinds of viruses, of course, that occur from time to time, and they all have their own sort of unique symptoms, but they all have something in common. Namely, when we get infected with a virus, for example, our body goes to work and tries to create some kind of immunity to that virus, usually by making antibodies, okay? When the virus comes in, it's not yet active. I mean, it's active, but it's not yet no antibodies. It's called antigen. That's the protein of the virus is now active. When the virus comes to the body, it can take 2 pathways in theory. One is the virus can do its dirty work. In this case, the hepatitis virus was causing liver cancer. The other way, it can go a different pathway, and we can have antibodies form against the virus. Okay, so when this is with respect to the hepatitis B virus that we're working on, okay? It's 2 ways. It turns out when we looked at the amount of antigen and antibody in all these people, the more antigen there is, then they're in an active state, right? Whether or not they have symptoms or not at that point in time is beside the point, but they're in an active state. When they have antibodies, then presumably they're immune. So antigen is active, antibodies immune. What we found was that as we looked at all the various nutritional factors associated with the amount of antigen that's active virus compared to the amount of the kind of nutrients associated with the amount of antibodies, it was overwhelmingly, and we had lots of correlations to work with in this case. It turned out overwhelmingly the people who were consuming more plant-based foods were forming more antibodies.
Wow.
It was striking. And people who consume more animal food, and it didn't take very much, I should say, in this population, even a small amount of animal food, actually, that was associated with liver cancer.
Wow.
That was highly, highly significant. So when people had more antigen, that's the active virus, they have more liver cancer. When they're consuming more plant material, in contrast, they form more antibodies.
Wow.
Really striking. And we had different ways in fact, of measuring, let's say, animal food intake. As I said, it was very small, and I didn't expect to see anything with animal food, quite frankly.
Wow.
But even small amounts caused an increase in blood cholesterol. You know, the LDL cholesterol, the bad kind, and stuff like that. And so it actually turned out that when we start consuming, and if I can interpret this, animal protein, right? More animal food, they get more antigens. More plant food, they get more antibodies, okay? So that's very exciting to know that. Because when people are consuming a plant-based diet, they're much more inclined, far more inclined, I should say, to form antibodies against these viruses. It's that simple.
And you said it's so
striking.
simple, they can start it right away and see results within a couple weeks.
Exactly. It's very fast. A lot
That's
of people don't realize how
astounding.
quickly this response occurs when they start eating this way. And actually, we have data now, not just us, but others too. We see changes occurring within a day or two or three.
That's
It's
incredible.
amazing.
That's
And
incredible.
so but we have to stay with it. We can't just sort of use it like a drug. Okay, we're going to eat these few days and we're going to go back. No, you have to stay with it. Because the body has to be prepared to always make antibodies.
Right. And the longer you do it, the stronger you get, obviously.
That's right. And then, so you have to stay with it. You can't go on and off kind of thing. You have to stay with it.
Right.
The other part of this equation that we actually did this in the laboratory, because the animal antigen was associated with the formation of liver cancer, we studied that in the laboratory with laboratory mice. And sure enough, and this has been published, it turns out when these animals, they're infected with the hepatitis B, if you will, virus, when they're given more protein, it turns on the formation of the liver cancer, very dramatic.
Wow.
And so here we got two sets of data. On one hand, the animal protein clearly stimulates the formation of the symptoms, in this case, liver cancer. Plant foods, in contrast, actually stimulate the formation of antibodies. And we had another set of statistical data too, the cross-link them, and everything just fell together like a beautiful puzzle.
That is amazing.
That's one thing. The other thing that we should know in the case of, if this applies to the coronavirus, and I believe it does, the other case is that we now know that 95% of the people who actually suffer, that die from the coronavirus, 95% of people are people whose nutrition has been compromised. What does that mean? They got diabetes, they got high blood pressure, they got this or that, heart disease, if you will, from eating the wrong food. So it coincides perfectly with the information we have from China. Eat animal food and you're going to increase the amount of symptoms that form. And also you're going to increase the chances of dying. That's the theory. That's the way the pathway works. And so when people are infected with the virus, there's two things that can happen. Either they can form antibodies or they can form their symptoms, whatever they happen to be. In this case, for liver cancer, but coronavirus is something different. Right? And so that's one thing. And if people who are already compromised with bad nutrition, they're particularly susceptible. So that's why we get people, a lot of the cases that are occurring, most of them, are in older people over 60 or 65 years of age. And they're compromised because of their nutrition.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm really talking about something here, not just specific for this coronavirus. I'm talking about this is a way of eating.
Yes.
That it turns out is consistent with the way of eating that we already know about with respect to the degenerative diseases like heart disease, cancer, and so forth.
Right. So
So
you
we
get an
got
extra
these
bonus.
two clusters of diseases now. It's just sort of covering the waterfront, if you will. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for people to give it a try.
Yes.
There's really nothing lost. And because the effect is so fast, for people who have been exposed or are about to think they're going to be exposed, if they were to go on this kind of diet, I'm really rather confident. We haven't done those kinds of studies yet, but I have to tell you, there's nobody done the studies to the contrary either. The fact of the matter is, that's what we should see. It's not really possible to do the exact kind of study the scientists would like to see. We get a bunch of people, we give them the virus, and other people we don't, and then we trade, switch back and forth. And that's, obviously that's unethical. So that kind of study, that direct testing kind of stuff doesn't work, either for this disease or others in this particular case.
We have a second slide that you brought in, the COVID WFPB hypothesis.
Yes. Yeah, well, you see, there you see the two arrows, as I recall, and that thing leading two different ways. And the whole food plant-based diet, when we're eating that way, what it does, it tends to block the formation of symptoms. That's the top line. At the same time, it's stimulating the formation of antibodies. So in other words, it's attacking both pathways simultaneously, resulting in the same end result.
So you get a double positive from the plant-based diet.
Pardon?
You get a double positive.
That's right.
Effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You get a double positive, even though one is going up, there's technically go down. But on the other hand, it's a double positive, and it's together. That's the name of the game.
We have one more slide that we wanted to show. This is the individuals most susceptible to COVID-19, 60 plus years of age, and 95% poor nutrition.
Right. That's the one I was talking about. Those who are most susceptible to this virus are the people who have already been compromised. They have one of these diseases that is caused. The reason they have those diseases is because they're already eating wrong food to begin with. So if they were to switch to a plant-based diet, we already have lots of evidence, starting with Esselstyn, Ornish, and many others. You start feeding them this way, you turn things around in a hurry.
So Colin, before we end, I just want to go over how people can reach you. This has been amazing work that you've done and discovered, and I know that you've posted one of the articles on one of your websites, and your sons have been so instrumental and helpful with your work. Your other son, Nelson, has been creating pods or communities all throughout the United States to recruit people to talk about this in their communities. I went through the website yesterday. It has all sorts of handy toolkits, media incentives, studies to back you up, recipes, cooking classes, all the things that you need to switch over to a plant-based diet are there. Even shopping in a regular supermarket where you can't really find an abundance of fruits and vegetables. They give you great, simple tips to use. So we want to know how people can reach you. I know that you also offer a nutritional course online. It's 6 weeks, I think, and people can just log on and hear so many speakers from a vast array. Some of them you have mentioned, Dr. McDougall and Dr. Neil Barnard and Dean Arnish. And your work is just astounding. It's just mind-blowing. So we really want people to use these tools. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or to get hooked into the whole process?
Well, a couple ways. Obviously, go to the website, and there'll be information there. I kind of have to not filter, I didn't mean to say that, but be a little bit selective. The one that I usually use is nutritionstudies.org.
Okay.
There's an email that goes with that on that website, as well as there's one with the Plant Pure Communities.
So Plant Pure Communities, just Google that.
.org, exactly. And that latter one is the one now organized in a so-called Jumpstart program that people may wish to consider doing for 10 days. But in any case, yeah, we've got these different kind of opportunities.
They're worldwide, and if I can't stress it enough, the medical community, a lot of my friends who've been doctors and nurses have hooked in and taken the course. It just provides you a vast array of new information that you can use with your clients. It's basically re-educating America that we don't have to be hooked on protein. We can use plant-based foods for our health, especially in this pandemic. So important. And your China study book is still well read and circulated throughout the world, as well as your other book, Whole. So I really wanted to thank you for all your hard work and big heart in this whole pandemic time. I mean, I think it just gives people hope that they don't have to turn to medication. They don't have to turn to a doom and gloom sort of outlook if they do get the virus. They can get easily educated online and switch their nutrition.
Exactly. We just need to take care of ourselves eating the right food. It's that simple.
Yes. And you and your family are great role models, and I just think your work is so appreciative in this world, and I thank you for that. And I hope that you continue and with spreading this word, because it's so important at this time. I don't think we're going to get through this virus unless we start taking care of our immune system and our bodies and work towards improving our nutrition.
One more comment I would add to that, and that is the fact that the food we eat has a major impact on environmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's a biggie. We don't get that right, there's no sense of talking about anything else.
Exactly. And some of these viruses are coming out of the factory farms themselves and the meat producing plants. So it's a wake-up call that we really have to switch over.
We have a new course on that, on food sustainability at nutritionstudies.org that people might be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I just love your work. I just think you're an amazing person, and to come from a dairy farm and teach so many thousands of people how to take care of their health now is astounding. So keep up your great work. And it was great.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great having you on the show. And join us next time for another episode of Macro Magic.